Okay, everyone, if I could have some quiet. We need to turn some time over to one of the most important actors in this enterprise, the principal developer. So I know we have some presenters online. If you could please introduce yourself and begin your presentation.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Brian DeAndrea, Senior Vice President at Century Housing. I'll be presenting first on behalf of the principal developer team, which consists of Century Housing, Thomas Safran Associates, and US Vets. As most of you know, we were selected by the VA back in 2018 to build a thriving and supportive community at the VA that upholds the promise of 1887 and does justice to our veterans. We'd like this afternoon to welcome all of the new VCOEB board members and congratulate Rob on your new chairmanship. Today, we're excited to share some of the multifaceted progress that we've made from construction to fundraising, community building, advocacy, and beyond. I know many of you had an opportunity yesterday to do a tour and have a chance firsthand to see the community that is unfolding on the North Campus, which is very exciting. Our MO is really to build a gold standard community. That's language right out of the original RFQ. We want to build a place that helps our veterans feel a sense of belonging and feel a sense of purpose. Belonging and purpose, those are two really important themes for us. And before jumping in, I want to acknowledge our partner, the VA, who has really stepped up over the past 5+ years and moved literal mountains to facilitate the parcel releases, develop the infrastructure, and work through many obstacles that we face in developing out this community. Next slide, please. So I'll start today with presenting a handful of Century's developments that are under construction, starting with Building 404. This is a new construction build that sits directly in front of Building 207, which you visited yesterday. It consists of 73 apartment homes. There are no specific set-asides other than these units being set aside for veterans experiencing homelessness. The property will support upwards of 5 case managers between the VASH case management and the property level case management that we're providing. The services we're providing at Building 404 include case management, mental health services, physical health coordination, substance use services, and beyond. Next slide, please. We began construction in November of 2022. Construction is proceeding at pace. Our framing is completed, the roofing is well underway, windows have been installed, drywall has been loaded, installation is underway, and the scaffolding is now up on the building. Next slide, please. We are slated for completion late next year. Next slide, please. We have one last photo here we'll share with you of Building 404. And we'll move on to the next slide, please. The next building or series of buildings is buildings 156 and 157. These buildings represent the adaptive reuse of the old tuberculosis hospital on the North Campus. They consist of 112 apartment homes. 35 of these homes are specifically set aside for veterans experiencing homelessness that are also presenting with mental illness. These buildings will support upwards of 6.5 case managers between the VASH and the property case management. The services array is consistent with that just reported out on Building 404. Next slide. We began construction in June of 2023 and are slated for completion next year. The interior demolition is complete. There have been very extensive and elaborate structural retrofits that are underway and slated for completion next month. All of the roofs have been cleared of the existing Spanish tile and have been resheathed. And much of the metal stud framing for the apartments within is now complete. Next slide, please. This gives you a sense of some of the structural retrofits, some of the columns and footings that had to be repoured. There was a lot of work on this front. We are slated for completion in late spring 2025. Next slide, please. The last building I'll report out on is building, one more slide, sorry, is building 158. Building 158 is the sister building to 156, 157. It's also an adaptive reuse. It's the third wing of this hospital complex consisting of 49 apartment homes. We began construction and closed late last year. Similar to building 156-57, other than the experience of homelessness, there are no specific veteran set-asides. This property will support upwards of 5.5 case managers. Services will largely mirror those described earlier. As mentioned, we closed in December of last year, pulled permits, and broke ground. Next slide, please. The demolition interior is well underway, and we expect to reach completion in the next couple of months. All of the interior abatement is also complete, and we have all necessary clearances in hand. And with this building, we are slated for completion in the summer of 2025. Next slide, please. This gives one last picture from the exterior. Just of note, we will be installing a gable roof on this building so it matches the two sister buildings. Right now, you see building 158 has a flat roof. So these three will look very consistent from an exterior perspective once they're complete. And I'm going to pause on my presentation now and turn it over to our next presenter. You can move forward on the next slide, please. There you go. I think this is Tyler at TSA. I don't know if he's still muted.
Okay, it says from our end that Tyler Monroe is unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. Hi, everyone. I think it's now working. I think my technical deficiencies here have been resolved. Hi, Tyler Monroe here, Thomas Safran Associates. I'm the Senior Vice President of Development, another member of the Principal Developer team, here to report out on a couple of our buildings' progress as well. As Brian mentioned about his buildings, building 402 is also under construction, immediately adjacent to buildings 156, 157, and 158. We have 120 units of housing there, 118 for veterans, and then 2 for managers. Our on-site staff, as similar to what Brian mentioned, we started our construction in January of 2023, and we're a little over halfway through construction with a projected completion of late this year, early next year. What makes this project a bit unique, while many of the ones that we've done to date are either new construction ground up or adaptive reuse of historic buildings, this project is our first modular construction project. So all of the units were actually manufactured off-site and delivered to the project as an effort to experiment with ways to accelerate further housing development for future projects. But all of those modules have been delivered. They are all set, and we'll show you some photos here coming up. Services will include case management, mental, physical health, substance abuse, etc., similar as service array provided at all of the other buildings. And we have a similar case management ratio where we project having 5.5 case managers and veteran support specialists here on site. Next slide, please. Here are a few photographs on the top and obviously to the right of the building. Scaffolding is up. Waterproofing is a little bit further along today than it showed in this photo, thank goodness, given today's rain. And then there's a slide on the left of just kind of the finished rendering, kind of a similar stucco to the other buildings that will be here at campus. Next slide, please. I'll hand this off to my colleagues at US Vets to update you on 210.
Actually, should be Lori Allgood. I'm not sure she's waiting. Thank you.
Hi. Can you hear me? Great.
We can hear you.
Great, thank you. This is Lori Allgood with US Vets. I'm Vice President of Housing Development, and I'm pleased to introduce our Building 210 today. Building 210 is an adaptive reuse. There are 38 units including 1 manager's unit. The population for this development will be homeless women veteran preference and all veterans. Construction start date will be May of 2024 and construction finish December 2025. Services in this building will include VASH case management, mental and health substance abuse, as well as women veterans programming, child services partnership, support for women vets on point coordinator, and family program staff. Service staffing includes 1 full-time director of behavioral health, half-time veteran service coordinator, 1 full-time VASH clinical supervisor, and 1.5 HUD VASH case managers. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Tyler, again, I'll give a brief update on where we are on building 408. I know that this building, from our prior conversations or the prior conversations earlier today, that it's been the subject of a lot of conversation. TSA and the principal developer are in preliminary planning on 408, starting with some initial concept designs and just basic due diligence in alignment with the VA and OAEM and GLA's parcel release schedule. Right now, we anticipate this being approximately 80 units of housing for homeless veterans, with a construction start sometime next year. As I mentioned, we're just starting with conceptual design. That is complete, and then schematic design actually isn't quite underway, but we contemplate it being underway in a few weeks' time. Due diligence, including surveys, soils, utility infrastructure evaluation, and other due diligence is underway, just to make ready for future planning. As you can see, you have a section of kind of the initial concept design that does include robust ground floor amenity space with housing above, facing onto Pershing with parking tucked behind. And then you can see below a site plan of housing that's the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th levels. The ground floor is almost exclusively amenity space to be determined, to be programmed to provide various services and amenities that are necessary to create a thriving community here, provide things for people to do here on campus. There are obviously many residents that are here and people living, working, and so providing opportunities for things to be done there. Next slide, please. Here's my colleagues at US Vets.
If I could move it. Paul. Hi, everybody. I am Tess Banco. I am both a representative of the Veterans Collective and US Vets. I am a Marine Corps veteran, physically disabled, experienced military sexual trauma, and also lost my husband while he was on active duty to suicide. So I'm a military widow as well. It's been my extreme honor and deep pleasure to work in 2 different arenas here at the West Los Angeles State Campus. I, up until this point, have held 2 roles. So one of those was building the services community. So building the piece of, I don't like to call it a project, the community, where we look at services not only within the buildings, but also services for those veterans who are in other programs on the campus. We haven't really talked too much about it, but there's 1,200 veterans already living on this campus among the different programs, in addition to those who will be arriving with the opening of the new buildings. So as part of this role, I was able to establish US Vets West Los Angeles. As you know, there are VASH contracts in each of the different buildings where staff have been hired to provide VASH case management services to the veterans of the buildings. In addition to that, US Vets, as the lead service provider for the collective, knew just based on experience over 30 years of providing services across the country to veterans, that VASH case management was one piece, but also there's that wraparound supportive services that all really helps veterans stay housed, help them stay healthy. So there are now 8 staff on the ground. Originally it was just me, so we hired and also have recently hired a program director who will then become the executive director of US Vets West Los Angeles site. There's 1 VASH contract that I had the joy of standing up working with SIRS and VASH to accomplish. Hiring that team. We've also responded to a multi-year VASH RFP, so there are other buildings that will be contracted out for VASH case management. We have applied for that, and we will know when everybody else knows how that goes. Inside the building, I know you all visited. It was really great to get some time with you all to show you around. But there's a slate of events that goes on regularly during the month. There's events, supportive offerings. There's a monthly coffee and conversation. That's the real low key. Let's talk together. And then there's also the community meeting where it's a little more structured, and we also get feedback from the residents about the things that they'd like to see and provide them with outcomes to the issues that they might have raised during the other meeting. In addition, there's a lot of groups and classes, so technology is a big one, especially because that building is 62 and over. There's arts, finance classes. We've done juicing. There's been horseback riding. We've used our 7-person ADA compliant van to be able to transport veterans off the campus, and also have done a variety of different special events. United Talent Agency is one of the sponsors of some of the programming because, as you know, we have to fundraise to be able to provide this full range of programming. And we also had a holiday party with Fox, and we are able, with some of these events, to invite veterans from other UL buildings. So trying to widen that net of the things that are available. Also, there's a temporary services center outside of Building 210. So you just heard about the makeup of Building 210. It is a triple wide trailer that we've already begun to start providing joint programming. Our first class was Hopeful for the Holidays with the Veteran Family Wellbeing Center, which when I first arrived on this campus 7 years ago, I stood that program up, and it's the only program on the campus specifically for veterans and their families, which is an important component of the community. Also, there's been just coordination across the VA sections and community partner services, including peer support, which is, as you know, huge. Spending time with somebody who's had some of the same experiences, that certification is also really important. And special needs resources for women veterans and different populations that might be in the minority on the campus. Next slide, please. My other role, which I'm fully stepping into now, is the Community Development Director under the Veterans Collective. As part of the Principal Developer Team's community plan, it was always envisioned that there would be a backbone organization, which we chartered. It's a 501c3 nonprofit, and it's based on the principles of collective impact. We go further together, especially with a community of this breadth and depth. It's going to require all hands on deck working together in coordinated fashion to provide and to support veteran empowerment on the campus. So we're just really working to bridge gaps, bringing veterans, especially VA and macro community partners together. There's a lot of discussion about administration, property management best practices. So we're sharing with each other. Every 2 weeks, I convene a group where we have property managers and services teams meet together. In addition to, there's also a VASH meeting where the VASH providers meet as well. So we're all communicating. We're trying to sharpen the communication. Safety is also a key component. So recently, VA held a roundtable about safety. We went through different scenarios. We were able to share what we do in each different building with each other and share resources. As I mentioned, there are joint macro events, trainings, and initiatives. So you can see off to the right, there's a little hopeful for the holidays. We're also going to have an expressive arts class coming up in the services trailer. So again, branching out from the inside of the different UO buildings and serving the wider population of veterans that live on this campus. There's also continuous feedback loop and communications building. So in the course of my 3 years with TBC and before that, one of the things that I've always loved to do is walk around the campus and talk directly to veterans, right? Fellow veterans asking, hey, what's going on? What's on your mind? And that continues on in my role with TBC. So not only when I came on did I read all of the feedback that was in the Federal Register from the 2 iterations of the draft master plan, but I went around and I collected feedback from the veterans, asking them about community components. And yes, the loneliness, the boredom, the desire for coordinated community. These things are all themes that are repeated continuously. So we're really working, TBC is working to bring the community together and continue to collect that feedback as we look at where we're going as a community. And then finally, the 2024 annual impact report is in progress. There are previous versions of that on the WLAVC website. So you can check those out as well to see what our progress has been like. Next slide, please. All right, handing it off to Lainey Capkin.
Thank you. Lainey Capkin, US Vets. Very pleased to continue reporting on the Veterans Promise campaign, which, as you know, was our effort to really engage the community in this vision that we all have for the campus. The campaign priorities that are outlined here, they reflect the areas that don't have other funding sources available. So our goal was really to fill in the gaps that were required to bring this campus to life. And we've listed here some of the partners that have joined on. We have much more in the works. For this particular update, I wanted to share a very large gift recently received for the Wadsworth Chapel leadership gift from the Amundsen Foundation, which will help us really begin to move forward with the restoration and repurposing of the chapel and the creation of a spiritual home on the campus. And so we're very, very excited about that. That's what reflects the variance in revenue raised to date in this report from our last report. And we continue onward. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Ryan, this may be back to you.
Yes.
There's a slide entitled, What's to Come in 2024?
Do you have them?
Thank you. I needed to be unmuted. I couldn't unmute myself. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, so just I think you got a pretty good sense from the prior presentations this afternoon. There's a lot of construction that is underway, more than 500 units by our tally, with 37 more slated to begin when Building 210 closes in a couple of months. So, we're going to be in execution mode, bringing these projects to fruition. So that will command a lot of attention and focus. We're also in the midst of completing our final planning process for the connectivity and mobility improvements that are being funded by the state of California, nearly $20 million of ASIC and IIG funding. So working very closely with the VA on that, and that will bring those improvements to many of the communities that we're developing on the North Campus down to the west side of the campus where we connect into Brentwood. So that is well underway. As Tyler mentioned, we are squarely in pre-development in the phase 2 area of the community, starting with Building 408. A lot of fundraising will continue in the year ahead, hoping to make further progress with Wadsworth, as well as a number of the other funds that are part of the Veteran Promise campaign. We're also continuing to advocate with our legislative leaders on elements of the Leasing Act, including the ability to name different areas and buildings that would support some of the fundraising that we're doing. Tess spoke to you about the backbone implementation. This is the Veterans Collective and bringing together the many stakeholders and veteran service organizations on the North Campus, especially as hundreds of additional veterans are moving in. We're home to more than 1,000 veterans today across all of the different facilities and buildings. And then beginning to prepare for the lease up, right? There'll be 380 or so homes being concurrently completed and leased. And so that planning effort will pick up steam here in the months ahead. That, I think, concludes our formal presentation. You can flip to the next slide. And I think we are available for any questions that the board would like to ask of us.
Thanks. That was extremely informative. Jim Zenner, you're the first question.
Yeah. Jim Zenner. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Just wondering, we've had a lot of success with the one team out in the community. Wondering if there's any kind of one team type coordination for everything that's going on with the campus, services and opportunities for veterans, but also public safety. Wondering if there's anything like that.
So I think that is part of the continued coordination that is going on, not only between the VA sections, but the additional partners that are coming onto the campus. And then, of course, planning. VA planning has been absolutely tremendous in bringing together the different UL holders and BASH insers and the services team. So the current convening that is held every 2 weeks has been kind of the budding of more coordination, increased coordination, because I think everyone certainly sees the need for it.
Anybody from education institutions on there? Any employers on there?
Yeah, so as part of US Vet Services Model, we have a career development initiative. We also do work directly with the VA's employment section. And so I think each of us works within, kind of the scope of our offerings as we continue to try to coordinate a more full package. So we also pull resources from the outside. We're certainly connected to the LA Veterans Collaborative. I'm the Access and Engagement Working Group Chair there. So when we cannot find a resource, we put together a package of resources, but we cannot find one. We go out and we do outreach into the community to find the best resource to fill it. But yes, employment, education, Brentwood School has been working with the collaborative group here, and then also so has UCLA. And there have been, classes and courses that are offered. There have been some certificate programs that they've been looking at that I know that they've spoken to this body about previously. So the coordination continues.
Yeah, it'd be great to see a list of everybody. And it seems like it's a special invite only. Wondering if it's possible to open it up to the community to invite to see if there's anybody from the community that would like to participate.
I think that's excellent feedback as we continue to coordinate.
Recognize the vice chair.
Lori Sutton. First of all, let me just say to Tess, thank you so much for the tour yesterday and for everything that you're doing. If I had to think of inventing a backbone, you'd be the one that would come to mind. So thanks for all that you're doing. And thanks to everyone on the principal developers team who has briefed this afternoon. This is very exciting. I have three separate questions. I'll just lay them out, and whoever is appropriate to answer, that would be great. One, I know that to this point, the majority of the effort rightly has gone into the housing developments, all that we saw yesterday, and it's so exciting to see the lease ups and talk to the veterans who are involved. And I know there's also attention now that we're paying, the department's paying, and I know the principal development team is paying towards the town center concept. In reading the ULI report, I was very interested in their notion of the commons with the quad, the promenade, parade ground, and then the chapel. And by the way, great news on the fundraising for that chapel. That's very exciting. And my question here is, the ULI team laid out that this town center, to bring this, to animate the town center and the commons, bring it to life, would need a number of different authorities. But my question is, they also pointed out that it could either be incorporated under the existing principal developer EUL authority or be sent out as a separate solicitation. So I would just be interested in any of the principal development team members' comments on what experience the PD team would bring to bear in terms of past developments that would be consistent with the commons and town hall concept. I'll go ahead and put the other two questions out there as well, and then look forward to your responses. Secondly, we had some feedback earlier this afternoon about service dogs and pets for our veterans. And I know we saw yesterday on the tour that there are already certainly service dogs and pets on the campus. The question is, what provision is there for, dog parks or places that are convenient to the buildings for dogs to do their business? That's the second question. Third question, I was very interested in building 210 and seeing, and you mentioned some of the programming that's developing for women veterans. And I wasn't clear whether those 36, 38 units are transitional housing or is that permanent supportive housing? I'd like to get, just to understand that more, as well as to know about any future programming in terms of permanent supportive housing for women veterans, with all that is entailed, including potential family members.
Sure.
That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Tyler Monroe here, Tom Safran Associates. I'll take question 1 and then I'll defer to my colleagues on questions 2 and 3. Brian may chime in as well on question 1. I think with respect to the ULI TAP study that was released, we've only just recently received it, much like you all have, and we're still very much digesting the details of it, trying to understand what it presents and how it aligns with what we've previously contemplated. So we don't have a formal response kind of put together yet or thought through as it relates to ULI recommends and what we've previously contemplated. A couple of the major takeaways that we did notice was that the ULI TAP does recommend a mixed use area within what either Veteran Plaza, Town Center, or whatever term we want to use for that area. Mixed use, they specifically, note is, housing above ground floor amenity or service space. And that is 100% consistent with what the principal developer has contemplated as part of the community plan and is included in Master Plan 2022. So we agree with the ULI TAP wholeheartedly on the need to do mixed use in that location. And I think a lot of the sketches that they've put together for the Veteran Plaza speak to that. I think there's a lot of alignment in terms of what types of services and amenities ULI TAP suggests, specifically administrative and events, food and nutrition, social and recreation, education, employment, health and wellness, daily amenities and resources, and the like. I think those are very much aligned with what has been contemplated by the principal developer in its community plan and Master Plan 2022 as well. But again, as I mentioned, we're still continuing to evaluate the specifics and get into the details. With respect to I think the real question, which was what experience do we all have? I think there's a variety of experiences, which makes our kind of joint venture unique. Obviously, Villages at Cabrillo is an often cited example that U.S. Vets and Century Housing have worked on. I can also say that with Thomas Safran Associates as a developer of affordable housing has done many mixed-use projects throughout Southern California, anything as small as 2,000, 3,000 square feet of ground floor amenity space, non-residential, to 55,000 square feet of ground floor amenity, commercial service space. In that case, it has a Target, it has a bank, it has a potential lease right now with a medical professional, and food providers, and that's actually located in the city of Inglewood. And there's a variety of examples in between. So I think the combination of has experience in a variety of creating mixed use spaces that go well beyond just housing alone. But again, go back to what I said in the very beginning, we're still very much digesting ULI TAP and how it aligns with what we have contemplated.
And I would just, thank you, Tyler. I would just add that many of the abundance of the uses that we've contemplated in this Veterans Plaza or Town Center area, right? These mixed uses on the ground floor of the housing developments, the bulk of these uses are allowable under the Leasing Act. They meet the definition of community-based support services, right? Which is part of the definition of supportive housing, which is what the Leasing Act and the EUL authority under which we've been granted and leased these parcels requires. There obviously are a handful of uses where there is some gray area, and that's those are the ones that we're working with our elected officials to generate clarity on. But I think it also it's informative to go back to the original RFQ under which we were selected. There are numerous citations within that RFQ document. The VA engaged us to help build a sense of community. The town center is actually referenced in the RFQ document. So it wasn't just about the housing bricks and sticks. It was about creating a holistic, thriving, supportive community. And that is the spirit of the community plan, which was almost entirely folded into Master Plan 2022. There's, wholesale consistency between those two documents. I think I'll turn it over to Tess and the US Vets team maybe to answer questions 2 and 3 about the service animals in Building 210.
Sure. Just going back to that question about models, we were honored to be asked by Dr. Joshua Brandberger to fly up to San Francisco, look at some of the other models that currently exist. So certainly, Century Villages at Cabrillo has been a starting point, right? So looking at that model, which functions there, but extrapolating from there, I mean, even to the intentional communities that Dylan works on. So looking at that model as well in New Orleans, there certainly are other models that exist that we have looked at too for best practices. So Building 210, the question about women veteran services, it is permanent supportive housing for women veterans, so it's not transitional. Originally, there was, a plan to have a program. There is a program in existence on the campus, so it's New Directions Oasis for women. But US Vets does operate an advanced program down at Century Villages at Cabrillo. So that is transitional for women veterans and has had a lot of really great success, specifically because it also involves women with children, which a lot of programs leave women with children out. Unfortunately, it can be quite a challenge and very hard for women veterans in need to go in for treatment, especially being a breadwinner or a caregiver. So that's an important piece of it. But yes, Building 210 will have a range of supportive services for women veterans, including advanced. We also have a Women Vets on Point program, which provides specialized women's mental health. I have to be honest, I get my care here. I visit women's health pretty regularly, and I've got nothing but great care through that clinic here. So we are also coordinating directly with Women's Health, Dr. Batuman's team over there, and trying to bring together what already exists and continue to work from there, not reinvent the wheel. There's so many experts here on this veterans home already existing.
The next question is to Nicole.
Oh, sorry. The service animals. So service animals are allowed in the building. So the services team, the lead service provider, US Vets, we have gone through and made a list of resources for those veterans who have served animals, including food. We have some resources to be able to provide medical care because it can be quite expensive, as you know, veterinary care. So we are able to share those among developer teams and support each other for those residents who do have pets. As far as dog parks, I will defer to the principals of the team to talk a little bit more about what might be contemplated there.
I think that's helpful feedback. I do know that we have contemplated the connectivity to the dog park up in Brentwood and some of those amenities. I think let us take that under submission and give some thought to where that type of a use could potentially be located within the confines of the North Campus. I don't know if the VA has separately considered that, but it's good feedback.
Thank you so much.
All right, Nicole.
Thank you. So just a quick note, I used to work for quite some time with veterans, and I'm currently running a nonprofit that builds and provides the services on site supportive housing. So from one supportive housing provider to another, couple questions. One, I didn't hear anything about security, so I would love to hear what the plans are with either the individual buildings or as community, what the security will be. And then the unit size distribution, if those charts could be, the slides could be updated to include that. It's great that there's a separate building and we're thinking about women and children, but when people move into the buildings, their demographics change. They reunify with children, they fall in love, and LA will still be a very unaffordable place for them to move if they're in a studio. So I would love to hear more about the unit sizes.
Sure.
Tess, if you'd like me, I can maybe initially speak to the security and anyone else can weigh in, but we acknowledge that that is very important. We have separately established a community association, which is the equivalent of an HOA, or a condominium association. And those CCNRs are being recorded against every subsequent EUL parcel or leasehold parcel. Those subsequent EULs will eventually pay into the association, and one of the primary expenditures of that association is private security that would supplement above and beyond what LA County Sheriff and or the VA PD is able to provide on site. The association effectively kicks in, I believe, once we reach 300 and I think it's 350 or 380 cumulative homes that are operating on campus. So we're not quite there at that threshold yet, but that is the intention once we reach that threshold.
Further, the principal developer team has agreed to use the same security provider. So Elite Security, which we've already involved in conversations with VA PD. I also want to give a major shout out to the VMet team. So we have Captain Harris in the back with one of his colleagues. And when there have been issues, or if there have been issues, I mean, because they certainly will arise. I think we all recognize that they have been able to support through just tailored, supportive contact with the veterans. So very empathetic, you know, it's an additional layer of support, especially when there might be something going on in the mental health arena with a veteran. So I just want to thank you guys and your whole team for all of the support. But yes, there's been a lot of coordination around safety and security, especially on the part of VA planning. So planning that charrette, examining everybody's different fire protocols. The principal developer team also created a joint safety white paper, which we've also shared with our colleagues in the other buildings.
Beth Sandor's next question.
All right, and I care about the unit distribution.
We can look into adding that. So,
Okay.
We've received it in previous slides, and it would be great to kind of just restore back. We got so many new board members. If we can get the breakdown of studios, one bedrooms, that'd be great.
sure.
Noted.
That's Sandor. First, I just want to echo just how incredible the collective impact work they're doing here is. Excited to follow that, just a real model. My question, and maybe it's adding on to Nicole's, it could just be part of an inventory that gets updated, is there an inventory of the tenant eligibility criteria and funding sources for each of the projects, both those that are operational, in development and proposed?
Yes, there certainly is. So we do have a list of those, and there's also a track.
Great, it'd be great to be able to see that. Thank you.
Our board members are all much smarter than me. It's going to be a challenge to keep up with this crowd. The board gets better and better every cycle. Stephanie Cohen has the next question.
Stephanie Cohen, no question, just a comment. Tess, love seeing you here. Thank you for being here. I would like to request that the rest of the PD team be here in person next time. It's really challenging to have an open dialogue about this process when you're not here physically, and not VA's fault that we have tech issues. This is like just a tech issue. But you know, the sound is in and out. Really would like to request you be here in person. It's a super important thing for us. It's the primary purpose of this board, so I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Sarah Hunter has the next question or comment.
Sarah Hunter. So, you know, as we learned earlier from Ms. Sander, we're going to have an unprecedented concentration of high acuity veterans on this campus. We now are starting to have some lessons learned from who we have here now. I also understand there was a recommendation put forth recently about putting nurses on site that was not approved. And my concerns are raised from a symposium we held a couple months ago among developers and supportive housing providers and case management staff around LA County. Because as we learned earlier, due to Proposition HHH, we've been building across this county at an incredible rate, and there's some, challenges along the way. One of them being that LA County uses a intense case management services model that is not, consistent, or it's not the same fidelity as what was tested in Housing First across the country, which uses a sort of assertive care treatment model. What that means is case management is not around 24/7, nor is there access to 24/7 psychiatric care, which is what was tested and shown to work, why Housing First works. So housing developers at our symposium a couple months ago told us that they, quote unquote, felt that they had been left holding the bag in terms of resident issues, because case management is just, a roving model. They're here. They may be called 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, but they're not even on site. So my concerns are about, are we going to have 24/7 supportive services here? Do we need to revisit that recommendation about having nurses on that side of the campus? And I just want to hear from, property management who've been doing this not only here, but around LA, of what's needed to help support housing stability. Thank you.
Sure. Before property management weighs in on it, I do want to say that a key component here on the campus is the VASH program and the VASH case management and the strength of the relationships between the VASH case managers and those who may have intensive care needs. Through that relationship, when you're working with veterans within a particular building, you're able to kind of baseline and have an understanding of what a veteran might be experiencing based on your previous experiences with the veteran. So that is a huge piece of the service. So being able to have that personalized care, of course, they're all in different stages of VASH case management based on their clinical needs. They're assessed by the VASH team. And there's a lot of coordination that goes on between the teams of medical providers, HPACT, which is homeless patient care teams, that includes nursing. We have a great relationship with Building 500, so the ER down there, being able to refer down if a veteran's in need of some service or if we have a concern. And again, VMET also has a mental health component to it, where if we need assistance, we're able to reach out to them and they're that additional layer of support. So it has been a combined effort. There are not nurses in Building 207, but we do readily have access to VA nursing and the VASH program.
All right, Jim Zenner's up.
I would, if I could
Go
just
ahead,
add real quick, we visited San Francisco and spent the day with Dr. Bamberger, toured a number of permanent supportive housing developments. And in the city and county of San Francisco, it's very common for the county health department to provide that basic nursing service. And we observed the value of that. And I know a number of us have in our buildings provided for stub outs, for sinks, and some of our case management offices to allow for that future functionality. We're not an organization that would provide nursing, but certainly through the VASH case management or the VA direct, if nurses were made available, I think we would welcome that type of pairing of healthcare and housing, within each building.
And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the state of California Veteran Supportive Services grant, and that is specifically for aging veterans or veterans in need of additional support. US Vets is a recipient of that grant and does use it to support veterans in Building 207.
Jim?
Yeah, Jim Zenner. Just thinking about the significance of the CWT program and hearing from the gentleman who was the veteran from public comment, who was saying that he's having trouble getting connected to some kind of meaningful work or something to do. and then hearing from Mr. Reynolds about the lack of access with CWT. Appreciate Sally kind of making that connection and seeing what we can do there. The reason why it's so significant, if you don't know about the CWT program, it's compensated work therapy. And when I worked at the VA, a lot of our peer support specialists that can promote up to a GS9, which is a pretty decent wage, a lot of them came in through the CWT program. And a lot of our veterans are a great fit for the CWT program that are getting housed on the campus. CWT is part of, the employment side of it is part of the treatment team. So it's different than CDI and some of the employment groups that Tess was mentioning. I think it's very, very significant on this campus, taking the tour of the kitchen. Rob was mentioning, looking to bring some CWT veterans to work the kitchen. There's going to be a lot of work on this campus, and we can't afford to not have that program connected to our vets in housing. I would suggest that we look at, as a board, CWT utilization throughout the different units on campus as we move forward. Also, it'd be nice, is there a survey that's publicly available surveying the 233-ish veterans that are housed on the campus around what they want as far as amenities, and is it possible to do some kind of connectedness scale, like how connected our veterans are feeling to the community as they're getting housed on the campus? That might be something that we might want to look into as well. And then wondering what the impact has been on VAPD. I don't know if anybody has the data in the room, but the impact on VAPD since the 205 and 208 opened, numbers of calls, things like that.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for the question. Rob Merchant. We generally see about a 20% spike in calls for service with the opening of each new building to our VA Police Department.
Jim, we couldn't agree more about the need to survey. We've done a lot of outreach to date. We're in the process of developing a more specific survey instrument that is focused on the residents at the campus today. We know the VA is also working on an instrument. We're trying to marry these up to ensure that all of our questions are folded in, and we have one kind of global instrument that goes out to the veteran community, so we're not confusing residents with multiple instruments. But that is important data that will help to inform the types of uses that we fold into some of the flexible support and amenity space in the phase 2 area.
I think that's Tyler, right?
That's Brian that was speaking.
Oh, thanks, Brian. Yeah, that's great. I think part of the problem is we're not seeing the results of these surveys. We're not, at least I'm not. I don't know if, Chair, if you've seen them or any of the board members that have been here for a while have seen anything in the way of surveys and kind of what's coming from feedback from the residents. And it's really hard for us to advise the VA on recommendations if we're not getting access to that data.
So I think duly noted. Last question, Nicole.
It's a good one. Just one last note on security, and this is actually more of a comment than a question. Women, especially who have experienced domestic violence, and I'm sure MST and justice-involved veterans often have an adverse reaction to uniformed police as security. So just something to think about. If you haven't, you probably have already, but if you haven't, think about an alternative model as well, in addition to regular police to provide security for the buildings.
And again, I'll point back to VNet. So one of the things that the captain has talked about is a community policing model that isn't imposing, and it feels more like an extension of the caring community than it does uniformed police officers. So there definitely is that effort afoot. And then also, one other piece is the peer support, right? So policing their own, which is a model, part of the, certainly the US Vets model, but the collective has adopted it as well. So helping veterans be able to support other veterans, resident council work, and looking at policing in that way as well has been very important.
All right, Keith Harris, that's the absolute last comment.
Super fast. Well, somewhat fast. Comment about employment. There is no question it's an incredibly important tool in terms of homelessness prevention, quality of life, all those things. The first is, I think we forget how, on average, old the veterans we are serving in Hudbash are. There are a very large number of retired veterans. There are disabled veterans. The solutions are going to need to be really nuanced, is the main point I want to make. There's also a chunk that is, I think, larger than any of us on the provider side would want it to be, who are not interested in employment, at least now. And that puts a lot of onus on the service providers and case managers and their peers to help generate more of an incentive and an interest in that. So it's not as easy as just creating enough CWT positions or other jobs in the new kitchen or doing construction on the buildings, which struck me when I heard it as a great idea. There's a lot of work to do in terms of incentivizing and targeting those to the needs and abilities both of the veterans.
Yeah, and it's an all hands on deck. I mean, Jim and the VPAN, the Veteran Care Access Network that he stood up, and then also the LA Veterans Collaborative and the one team effort, it all figures prominently into being able to coordinate together. Every month there is the LA Veterans Collaborative meeting where you've got people who will come in and say, I need to employ a veteran in the chat, and then somebody will respond back, I have a job. So it's creating that type of system and continuing again to sharpen that on again.
So Tess and all the rest of the PD team, super appreciative for the presentation. I really do want to underscore the value of, because we have so many new board members, in the next few briefings, let's go back to that routine of describing not just the unit characteristics, but also the funding characteristics. What AMI thresholds, what for chronic homelessness, for serious mental illness, because we really need to get everyone back to that same baseline. Thank you so much.
Noted. Thank you.